We thought that we would start by just coming into our bodies a little bit and grounding in, just as a way to really start our time, acknowledging that how we find more choice, how we find more agency is by coming back to ourselves and coming back to each other in this moment. And it's really through the body that we have access to more of ourselves and that we have access to more of each other, ideally, as well. So wherever you are, you can just start by feeling that your feet are on the ground, or whatever's making contact with the ground or a chair is there. And you can just take a breath or two. And they can be pretty big breaths if that feels right. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And as you breathe, let yourself notice that there is a body that exists below your neck. There is a self that exists below your neck. And so much of the time we get really caught up in a story. We get really caught up in all of the news that's out there. We get really caught up in thoughts. But there's this whole world that exists below that. And so as we come into contact with that, let yourself just notice, what's one place in my body that I can feel right now? What's one place below the neck that I can feel? And that place that you can feel doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to feel good, but let it feel comfortable. So if it's just a place that you can feel and you can stay with, whether it's your pinky toe or your arm, or your hand, let yourself just notice that. And then just know that this is no small thing. This is no small thing to feel into a body. And it's no small thing to feel into a body that is living inside the world that we're living in. And then from there, you might also notice asking perhaps this place. You can just ask yourself, what is it that I care about? What is it that I care about? What does myself below the neck say about what I care about and what I'm about in this world? And this is something you can always do. So let yourself notice, how do I feel now? What gets to be true now? Even if you don't feel happy, or even if you don't feel better than when you started, it's like, what does get to be true on the other side of feeling into your body? What gets to be alive now that wasn't alive before? And so we can use that as a map for the rest of our time together today, as we ground into questions, as we ground into some context in which we're all here. It's like we always have this body thing to come back to. We always have what we care about and what matters to us to come back to. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Joanna for a moment. Thanks, Joanna, and thank you all.
Thank you, Brooke. That was good to ground ourselves to start. I'll just want to introduce myself and say a little bit about what we're doing here. My name is Joanna Darcy Moss, and call me Joanna. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I've been seeing a lot of clients. Of course, the world is dealing with COVID right now, so I've been seeing a lot of clients come in with loneliness, depression, anxiety, fear of the unknown. All of it is to be expected in this time because there's so much different, so much that we don't know right now. So we wanted to make sure to give an opportunity for people to ask questions and to talk about what's really going on in their minds. I did skip over one part that I wanted to make sure I said. I wanted to acknowledge, I usually work in Seattle, but I am at my home right now, which is north of Seattle. And I wanted to give an Indigenous land acknowledgement. I am in the land of the Snohomish tribe. Also, The context that we're in right now is stressful, not only due to COVID, but also due to politics, racial inequities that have been there always, but are becoming more widely acknowledged now. And there's a lot of change that we hope is good, but it's not always good. So I talk with my clients a lot about what they bring into the room with them, but that also acknowledges that there's a lot of influences coming out from the outside. And so that means that we need to talk about those as well. And so I want to invite that into this room that we are in right now. Acknowledgement of everything that's going on around us. One more thing I wanted to mention too, to just bring into the room before we get started, is the concept of self-care. When we're talking about mental well-being, that is important. And I like to think of self-care a little bit differently than I think people had traditionally talked about it, just when you're, reading some pop article or something about it. I believe that, self-care is not just spa days and bubble baths, things like that, but it's anything that helps you build up your resilience. And your resilience is your ability to, quote unquote, bounce back from hardships, things that may go wrong, things that are difficult and challenging. And so that could mean that self-care is lots of different things. It could be making things in your life a little bit easier, chores, things that you have to do, things that you want to do. So I think that I would like to bring that into the room, because I think that's an important part of mental well-being that we should talk about as well. And then I'll pass it over to Brooke.
Great. Thanks, Joanna. Yes to everything you named. I'll just introduce myself a little bit more briefly too. I'm Brooke. I use they, them pronouns. I am also a therapist and nutritionist in Seattle. I'm also a somatic practitioner and coach and facilitator and community organizer. So I wear many hats in the world. And I think the things that I just want to add on is really a deep normalization of the feelings of being very deeply unwell in this time, because things are not normal. Things are not normal. And I think there can sometimes be this this narrative or this discourse even that things have always been bad. And it's true, they always have been, for some people more than others, because we live inside of racial capitalism, quite frankly, that shapes everything, that shapes our capacity to be free, that shapes the way that our mental health shows up. And really understanding racial capitalism as this system that organizes trauma very, very unevenly. And now the pressure has been turned up all the way. The pressure has been turned up to 10 or even greater than that. And so, as much as we want to acknowledge the past and the histories of inequity, we are also living in an unprecedented time of inequity, an unprecedented time of pressure, an unprecedented time of racialized violence, an unprecedented time of economic disparity that keeps growing and growing and growing, right, during this time, and many, many other factors, right? So I really like to just say that over and over and over and over again. How you feel, how we feel, makes sense in this moment. Yeah, how we feel makes sense in this moment. And then repeat. So, so much of the work that I tend to do with people is really about that normalization, and then really understanding how systems come to be internalized into our bodies, and how systems prevent us from showing up in the ways that we care about. Okay, or how systems actually become internalized, and we act out things that aren't current time. Yeah, so it's like our trauma prevents us from showing up how we want to in this world. And so I think when we situate how our mental health is constructed with that lens, like how does our behavior lead us closer to what we care about or further away from what we care about? And when we situate that inside of a social context, then that kind of destigmatizes what's happening for us. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't my fault. This isn't my fault. Like actually, there is a whole host of reasons that make a lot of sense about why I'm showing up the way that I'm showing up. So I just want to offer that to start the conversation. And I think to just add on to what Joanna is saying about self-care is that sometimes I think self-care is also like really found in the act of taking care of other people too. Like one thing that I'm really inspired by in the last year, and we definitely have seen this in Seattle too, is like the outgrowth of mutual aid projects that are really taking care of community in a significant way. And so when we become involved in community and when we really show up inside community and we take care of other people, I mean, that just naturally has those impacts of us of feeling like we're making a contribution, which, like Joanna is saying, is that's a resilience factor. I mean, very, very really, it's situating ourselves outside of ourselves. And so we feel more self-efficacy. We feel more of that purpose. So I just wanted to add that on. It's like being out in the world, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like possible that we are to like make an impact, sometimes making that impact and risking towards making that impact and in community also has some mental health benefits back for us as well. I think that's what I want to say. And so I think now we can open it up to y'all and hear what the audience has to say. So questions, thoughts?
So I'll read the question out loud. Can we talk about finding reasons to live, finding connecting with life and death? Yeah, that's a big question, isn't it? There's a lot that could be said about that. If we were in a therapy session, I would be asking a lot of questions about what brings meaning for you. Reasons to live can be about bringing meaning to your life, finding gratitude. I think Brooke had something really good to say when they said that self-care is not just about doing things for yourself, but also doing things for other people. Sometimes that can be a reason as well.
Yeah, I think I would just add on to that, like just how real that question is. I really appreciate this question. Oh, also, Joanna, I feel like we should just say, for the sake of ethics, that we are not in a therapy session right now, and Joanna and I are here as just community advisors and folks who are committed to this work inside of our communities. And yeah, this does not substitute for any mental health one-on-one treatment. Anything else you would add or that we would need to add for the sake of that, Joanna, that I'm not thinking of?
No, I think that's a good thing to add. And just
Okay.
a reminder too that there are resources down below. The crisis line is one of them, and they're available 24/7.
Cool. Okay, great. So with that, thanks, Joanna. So with that, I guess what I want to add on here is that yeah, Chloe, just how real that question is and how much I appreciate it and how much that is, that this is really this is what's up for us. So many of us inside this pandemic, and of course before the pandemic too, as I was alluding to before. But Yeah, I really like what you said, Joanna, about purpose and meaning. And I think, like, when I think about folks that I've worked with in the past, it's like day by day, day by day. It's like, what's one thing today that I'm going to get up for? What's one thing that matters today? And whether it's just like a commitment to, I'm going to eat an ice cream that I really like, or my cat is there and I need to take care of my cat, or hey, it's not going to be rainy on Sunday. So I don't know if that's true actually in Seattle, but I'll just make it up. It's not going to be rainy on Sunday. And so I want to go for a walk with this friend, or I want to be able to get outside. Any of those things. Or like, I want to be here to see this tree outside my window bloom, in a month or so. Whatever it might be. So we can just find those like really small things. And I think also there's just something to hold inside of this moment about the contradiction of like, we're in so much grief collectively and individually too. And then we are still like asked to be people who are living. And so it's like, how do we situate ourselves inside of this contradiction of like, yeah, I'm grieving and I'm asked to keep going. And so it's like, how do I choose life inside of this? How do I find myself inside of what is? So yeah, and just again, like lots of care inside of that question. Seeing and appreciation.
Mm.
Do we want to go to Michael?
Yeah. Do you want to read the next question?
Yeah, sure. So Michael asks, what do you see as potential beneficial things that might come out of this pandemic as far as mental health goes? Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Sure, I can start. I think that, first of all, it's a really good question because we've got a lot of things that we're wondering about right now. There's so much up in the air, and a lot of this can seem bad. I mean, it is bad. It's not we haven't been able to see people. We haven't been able to see people for a long time, and so it can feel bad. And the positive things that can come out of it, I think one is a greater appreciation for people, for the people that we can hug, the people that we can see in person. And I also, I've been thinking a lot recently about what it is going to look like. Now that some vaccines are coming out, it's going to take a while before we can all venture out of our homes on a more regular basis. But what is that going to look like? And I think that I am hoping, I know for myself, I've connected with people further away than I have before in the past, and I'm hoping that that continues. I have much more regular contact with a friend in New Zealand than I used to. Video, we never chatted on video before, and now we do because that seems to be the norm. So one of the things that I'm hoping comes out of that is normalization of connecting with people in any way that you can. We don't have to wait for the perfect circumstances. Do what we can now to help ourselves feel better, get what we need to out of our connections. What do you think, Brooke?
I love that. Yeah, totally. Like, there is an opportunity inside of the move to video, just in terms of access and various ways that we access each other, also the ways that we access care too. So, if someone is living in, like Wenatchee, Washington, or some other smaller town in central Washington, who might not have access to a local trans affirming therapist, it's like, oh, now you have the whole state. You have the whole state because of telehealth. So I actually do think about the proliferation of telehealth as a way that is perhaps bringing more competent and affirming providers to folks who need them. And I know there's also a question from Angie about that, so we'll get to that piece. But I really do find that to be affirming. I also think that one thing that that me and a lot of my somatics friends and colleagues have been up to is holding these like sometimes very large online somatic healing spaces that only really got to proliferate because of the pandemic. They were really necessary, and so to do like really big group healing practices and that feels really cool to me that's happened. And I trust, and I'm like trying to continue to trust that those will still go on after the pandemic, because those will be needed and necessary, and people will be used to connecting in this way now, in addition to in person. So I'm just thinking about more access, more connection, like a diversity of ways to connect. And I think also there's something that feels like at the beginning of the pandemic, I was really situating inside of a disability justice lens around video is a way that folks who experience disability have always accessed care and always accessed organizing spaces and community spaces. And so it's how does video actually continue to increase access in a disability justice framework too? So those are some things I think about.
Yeah, access is so important, and it's increasing through video. All right, let's go on to the next question. Margaret's question. I'll read this one aloud. I've been getting really depressed recently, and it's tremendously difficult to reach out for help. I suppose I don't have a question as much as just expressing that I'm feeling, well, I guess like the weather is today, rainy, cold, and wet. Ah, yes. Yes. Yeah. As Brooke was talking about earlier, normalization. It's a really normal way to feel. We've been cooped up for a year now, and the impending summer has given us says that we'll get more sunlight soon, but goodness, it's not happening yet.
Yep. Same. Yeah, just makes sense. Makes sense. And you're not alone in feeling depressed, and it's not your fault. I just had a session with someone today. I am so depressed. I don't want it to be like this. It's of course we don't want it to be like this, and this is what's here. This is what's real. And I think sometimes too there's inside of the this is very smart, so I want to be careful about saying this too, but there's kind of an unbearableness to pain sometimes, and we want to push it away. And I think the more internal resources that we can build, and I'm really saying internal, so the more that we can kind of like Joanna's talking about in the beginning, the more that we can really turn to ourselves and care for ourselves and care for each other, and then increase our sense of ourselves and our purpose, the more that we're also able to be with some of those really big, hard feelings as well. I know that's not an easy task, but that's possible. I see that out there for us and for me, certainly, as I've struggled with my own mental health stuff this time. I can read the next one. So this is from Angie, and Angie says, it seems like finding a trauma therapist right now is super hard. I see some resources in the comments, but how long is the wait right now, and what's good to do while you're waiting? Great question. Do you want to start us off there, Joanna?
Yeah, first an acknowledgement that there is a long wait to find a therapist for right now. There are some There are some people who are accepting new clients, and it also depends. Fit is really important. So, when you say a trauma therapist, that makes me think of a lot of different things about, finding someone who practices the modality that you're looking for. I work with trauma. I wouldn't say, though, that I am a trauma therapist. I don't think that there's a therapist out there who has never worked with trauma. That's what clients bring, a lot of trauma into the room. And so, yeah, fit is important. How long is the wait right now? I really don't know how to answer that question because it's different for everyone. What's good to do while you're waiting? Resource yourself. Find the resources within yourself that can be helpful for you. Self-care, as we've both talked about already, but also what are your strengths? What are the things that can bring you through? Mindfulness can be important to that too, paying attention to what you and your body need right now and just getting through the next moment. You have anything to add to that, Brooke?
Yeah. I mean, it's just so hard to even do what we call in the therapy world the activities of daily living right now, and activities of daily living are eating and sleeping and brushing one's teeth and grooming and things like that. And I think the ways that we situate those things and prescribe amounts of them is sometimes not helpful anyway. It can be based in a lot of systems of oppression, but I think just taking care of yourself in a very bodily way, did I eat? Did I drink water? Did I sleep enough? Right? Those things. Did I change my clothes today? If that felt important to me to do, without shaming ourselves. That's really important. Again, without shaming ourselves, but it's just really those very physical, real things can really that I know are so hard to do when we're not feeling great. But those things can make a huge difference. I'll put my nutritionist hat on for a moment and just say when we aren't nourished, it is really easy to be anxious or depressed. Yeah, it is really easy to be anxious or depressed when we have not eaten or when we are dehydrated. And that is literally just a physiological thing. It's just 100% physiological. So if you're feeling like crap, eat some food. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to say. Just try to eat something. Take a drink of water. Yeah, and then I don't know how long the wait is either. I think it depends on where you're going. And some places probably there isn't a wait, and some places and people there's a big wait. And yeah, I think it is so hard to know what and who is going to work for us. And I think that probably seems like a big gamble when we're really struggling, because it's oh, I waited so long to get into this one person, and I just know that pressure is so high. So I feel that, and I think the perhaps the feeling into what do I really want to be getting out of therapy? What do I want to be true on the other side of therapy? Or what do I really need in a therapist to feel like I'm going to be met? I think some of those considerations are important to ask, a potential therapist, so that you might know more about them before you kind of take that risk in waiting, perhaps.
And there's something I just thought of too about finding a therapist is when a therapist tells you that they're full, you can ask for referrals. I know I've heard of sometimes people don't think of that, but you can. And you may find a therapist who doesn't have space themselves, but is able to find another therapist. They have their own resources, right? So they may be able to find another therapist who does have some space, or a very short wait list.
Yeah, that's how I found my therapist. Honestly, is my my first choice was full and she recommended someone, and that person's great. I love working with that person. So good reminder. Looks like there's a question in the chat about feeling a lot of pain in the body and how can we be grounded in the body when we're in constant pain due to disability. Yes. Yes, anonymous. Yes. I appreciate that question so much. And we learned that the body is not a safe place to be for tons and tons and tons of reasons. And one of them is chronic pain. And there are so many other reasons as well. And I also have a chronic pain history. I don't currently experience chronic pain, but I have in the past. And definitely when I was beginning my my work in somatics, that was when I was actually dealing with tons of chronic pain. And it's so hard to be in a body, and it's so hard when pain is so loud. And pain is like the loudest thing. And I think this is kind of where I would encourage us to probably do work with someone else to feel into body. But it's like the pain gets to be loud, and then there are a million other possible sensations and probably things that are existing alongside of the pain, is what I want to say back to that. It's just that we've become attuned to the pain for good reason, for like straight up evolutionary reasons. Pain is a signal something is wrong. And we have thousands, millions of nerve endings that are also bringing in other information at the same time. So that practice that we did together, it's like, okay, can I feel one place in my body that isn't that pain? And then can I stick with that for a second? And it's like the more we practice that, we're building trust in our bodies and trust in ourselves that there is something there that's other than the pain. And so it takes a long time. It's really, really slow to do that. And it's not necessarily ignoring the pain, but it's being with like, oh yeah, there are sensations, there are experiences, there are things that are perhaps other than the pain, or more than the pain, or get to live again alongside the pain. So I really, really appreciate that question, and it's just so real. And it's possible to not make the pain go away, but to feel other things alongside. Thank you. Also, one more thing with that too, I could probably talk about that for forever, honestly, is that knowing why it matters to feel into the body is also really good ground. Okay, so it's like, why do I want to have a relationship with my body? What's worth it about being in my body? So sometimes if we have answers to those questions, they can kind of serve as an anchor for us. And it's like, okay, like I know I want this. And for me, the answer would be like, if I have a relationship with my body, if I feel myself from the neck down, I just know that I get to be more connected to myself. I know that I get to be more connected to others. I know that I usually feel like I'm writing my own life rather than my life being written. And so all of those reasons are reasons that I would want to develop a relationship with my body, and why I might feel inclined to do the work of feeling something other than chronic pain, or what might get to exist alongside my chronic pain or my chronic illness stuff, which I currently do have as a bodily experience.
Yeah, I like that concept of being able to find something else besides the pain that's in there. It may only be in your right toe, but you can find it and feel it. And as with anything in therapy, in changing our mental health, physical health is the same. It takes time. Another thing that I wanted to add to that too is to be gentle on yourself, but how important that is. And that some days or some hours, sometimes it may not be the best time for you to participate in a certain activity. And Meditation can be one of those, and try another time. Don't push yourself if it doesn't feel right in that moment. And with time, it will get easier.
Oh yeah, and that reminds me, I kind of want to nerd out for a minute, just like in somatics world, honestly, is that like in order to feel your body as a safe place, your nervous system has to be regulated basically already. So if you are in a place where you're feeling really anxious, like up here, or you're feeling really like frozen, stuck down here, like going into your body in the way that we did might not be the place that's the best place for you to start with. So, there's kind of just like lots of different ways that we as somatic practitioners tend to orient people into their bodies. So we just did it in one way, and sometimes like if you're really up here, like taking some deep breaths, like in through your nose, out through your nose, those can be good. Orienting yourself to the room or the space that you're in and really like taking it, like orienting means like looking around, and your nervous system really likes it if you look over your shoulders, especially. Like those sorts of things are things that bring our nervous systems more current time, but are not necessarily about feeling into the actual body itself, but brings us into the nervous system. So I'll just add that on as well. Thanks for peeking that, Joanna. I was like, oh yeah, makes total sense.
Are there any other questions? From what I'm seeing, we've reached the end of the ones that we have, but we have more time if there are more questions. We do have another question here. How does trans mental health care look different than those who are cis/non-gender conforming? Do you want to start, Brooke?
Sure. I'm just looking at the next question too, which is cute and funny, which I'll just read really quick because I don't want to leave people hanging. I have this cat mug, and I am drinking echinacea tea. Is the question, and this person says preparing and drinking tea is great self-care in their humble opinion. I agree. Yes. And this mug is so good that I have two of them. I have this one at home and I have one at my office. That's because the tea bag can go in the cat's head, so it's perfect.
That's great.
Pun intended. Perfect. I didn't even try to do that actually. Yeah. How does trans mental health care look different than those who are cis, not gender non-conforming? Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say to that is like, two things that I would say is like, one, as trans folks and non-binary folks and other gender non-conforming folks, we just have a different set of relationships to power and privilege, or we have a particular relationship to power and privilege that is shaped by queer and transphobia, that is shaped by trans misogyny for some of us, that is shaped by us internalizing these systems, right? And so there's just going to be a different lived reality, right? And a set of concerns that arises from those lived realities, right? That is its own way of turning up pressure in response to the other pressures that are happening in the world. So it's like already, I live in this world as a non-binary femme person who sometimes experiences a lot of dysphoria. It's like, oh, perhaps maybe being really isolated or seeing myself on camera all the time because I'm doing 6 telehealth sessions a day increases my dysphoria in a way perhaps that, Joanna doesn't experience as a therapist in her role, or other people might not experience in their role. So I just gave you like a very real example from my own experience about something that I'm experiencing, and then of course, that's probably pretty for me. That's probably pretty minor in the scale of things, but can zoom out and things can get bigger and bigger. And, I think if I wasn't resourced, and if I didn't have a therapist, perhaps, and I wasn't engaged in some of my own work, like perhaps that would feel bigger and bigger and bigger to me. And so I think just even naming that there are these experiences that are very much gendered experiences, that are very much experiences that are shaped by transphobia, internalized or otherwise, that live in our bodies. That's one thing. I know I had another thing too, but I don't remember what it was right now. I'll leave it at that. What do you want to add, Joanna?
Yeah, I first of all want to say that I am a cis person, and so I did not want to go first. I can speak from the point of view of a therapist, but I can't speak from the point of view of a trans person. But I will say that I agree with what Brooke said about trans people are going to have different experiences. They're going to have oppression in their own way. And they're going to have, there's the intersection of all of the different pieces that belong to a person, that are a person, that make up a person. And racism, transphobia, internalized transphobia, all of it comes into play when you're talking with a person who, honestly, when you're talking with anybody who is not a white cisgender middle-aged man, oppression fits in, and able-bodied as well. Oppression fits in. And so when dealing with my clients, I listen to what each person has to tell me about their lives and about their experiences. And I think it's important, if you're looking for a therapist, it's important to understand or to know that the therapist really tries to understand where you're coming from. And that they're willing to listen to what your experience is. It's not going to be helpful if they try to tell you that something is not happening when it is, or they really need to just hear and take for granted that you know what is happening to you and be informed about how all of the parts of your identity intersect. And so that's something that I really tried to train myself on, or get training from others on.
Yeah, yes. I think the other thing that I wanted to say too, that I remembered, is that at the same time, like that we are uniquely situated as trans and non-binary, gender non-conforming folks. I also know that I just want to be treated as a person, with dignity and with lots of respect, and like anyone else. And of course, we come with these lived experiences that are shaped by power, and we want those to be absolutely honored. So I don't want to erase that. And personally, I don't want to be made exceptional, by my therapist either for experiencing things. I don't necessarily want someone to overemphasize things when it's not necessarily about gender, or it's not about race for me, as a BIPOC person. So that's the other side of the coin, is that yeah, it's different. Mental health care is different for trans and gender non-conforming people, and we all just want dignity, and we all need dignity, and we all deserve dignity. So.
Mm-hmm. So I'm getting word that we can wrap up if there are no more questions. Are there any more questions? I think that might be it then. Brooke, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think just thank you. Thanks to Gender Justice League, thanks to Traction, thanks to Amy, thanks to Joanna, thanks to lovely interpreters. I feel really, really... Oh, there is a question. Have you been writing more or fewer letters for transition during COVID? Yes, I've been writing. I'd say I've been writing more or about the same, number of letters probably that I was writing before. I don't know, probably actually a few more, I think. Yeah, I don't really have much commentary on that, but I do think there are lots of letters being written right now, for sure. Do you feel like that's
Yeah, from my perspective, it got quiet for a few months, I think, when lockdown was really
yeah.
more intense. But the last few months, yes, I've been writing more letters.
Yeah. Yeah. Like probably as things are starting to open up and it's starting to be more safe again to have surgery.
Yeah.
Anyway, good question, Michael. Thank you. Anyway, yeah, thank you all very, very much. And yeah, it seems like Joanna put those resources there and just reminding us that no, we are who we have for each other. We are who each other has. Yeah, and that's Michael's sense as well. And yeah, we just have to keep finding each other and keep finding community, and that's really I think that's the most important piece inside of mental health is how do we stay connected to each other and then back to ourselves.
Very important. I would say that as well. Connections are important for humans. And I also want to thank Gender Justice League and Traction for having this. And I really enjoy the presence of all of you. Thank you for being here. And it was good to talk with you too, Brooke. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.